everyone. Tonight I have the joy and honor of introducing Amy Woolard. Amy is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and the University of Virginia School of Law. She is both a writer and a legal aid attorney, which is really impressive. Her poems have been featured in such places as The New Yorker, The Paris Review, Poetry, and Plowshares, just to name a few. And her nonfiction essays and articles have been displayed through Slate, The Guardian, the Virginia Quarterly Review, and some others as well. Her debut poetry collection, which she will be reading for us tonight, was awarded the 2018 Alice James Award from Alice James Books. Neck of the Woods is vivacious and brilliantly human. It is gripping and sympathetic. She gives us lines like real talk, when all you have is breath, everything breathes like a rib, and the 5 stages of grief, front porch, lemon wedge, fossil fuels, yes and yes. The second quote comes from her poem, Person Familiar with the Situation, which is my personal favorite. In Neck of the Woods, the only monsters are humans, and Amy brings them to us in an approachable way. Finishing her book left me feeling both bereft and overfull in the way only good words can. You can purchase Neck of the Woods from Alice James Books or special order it through DDG right in Farmington. And we're so lucky to have her here with us tonight. And on that note, I'm excited to invite her to read.
Thank you so much, Taylor. That is an incredible introduction, and I really appreciate it. And I had the pleasure of meeting Taylor earlier today, and just want to thank her and Pat, who I think is here, Pat O'Donnell, whose class I dropped in on. I want to thank the University of Maine at Farmington for having me here in the Visiting Writer Series, and Amy Neswald for making this process so smooth and easy and wonderful. And just a few people to thank before I start. First, all of you, I really appreciate you signing in at 7:30 Eastern time at night onto a Zoom when probably many of you have been Zooming all day. And have the kind of fatigue that we are all having in the virtual space. So I appreciate you taking the time. I do need to thank Alice James Books, and I need to thank Carrie Salerno, who is my editor there, Alyssa Neptune, who is an amazing manager there, Julie Bausma, who copy edited the book, the AJB board, who chose it for the prize, and then definitely Lori Nix, who's an amazing artist whose work is photographed on the cover, and you should definitely check her work out. She makes these amazing ultra realistic miniature dioramas. So part of what you see on the cover of my book is actually 3D. It's a photograph of a 3-dimensional piece that is much more expansive. And so I really encourage you to look at her work, which I felt a real kinship with for this book. I'm going to read a few poems from Neck of the Woods. I have a couple of new poems as well on my list, because I think it's important for us to encourage ourselves. I was saying earlier today, we're never promised the next poem or the next book. So when I started writing one after this one, it was a real gift. So I want to try to keep that momentum going. I'm going to start out deep in some of the fairy tale territory that I try to cover in this book with a poem called A Place Where There Isn't Any Trouble. Girl walks into a house and comes out running. Girl runs down a neighborhood street and a pickup rolls up beside her. Storm's coming. Aunt says, girl, you know there are monsters out there and you never know. Aunt says, sugar, this storm will run roughshod over the dirt you call childhood. Farm and storm spread so wide, they each get a name. Whiskey rolls down her throat and lights the farm on fire. Aunt says, girl, there are monsters in this world you'll call friends in the next. Storms that'll write your name in the sky. Clouds that roll up and announce you like a choir. A fire don't chase, but it catches. The bells of the neighborhood church keep pealing on without you and do not call you home. Around here, ugly ain't a name for the way somebody looks, but how she talks or talks back. Rotten isn't just for apples, it's for how she acts. Girl walks into the woods and comes out a monster. Storm kicks up beside her. Mongrel paces just behind her footfall. There are farms in the world, but girl and mongrel are headed to the next. Around here, strip where a field meets the woods is called the invitation. Stray piece of straw on her skirt like an unlit match, stray light splintering through the branches like tangled hair. Oh, and she is lit with whiskey now. Now a fugue settles over the trees. Now a path undresses itself in front of her, fingers her forward. On the other side of an invitation, somebody is always cooking up something. Trouble is a dish, a prayer. Fill my plate with sugared apples, fill my heart with discipline. Mongrel cases any new body might stand in her way. If you can't beat them, join them, the farm calls. If you can't join them, let them walk you to your truck, but when it's time to go, it's time to go, the bells peal. Girl peels off her Sunday skirt like a bell gone soft. An invitation is just another line to be crossed after all of it rinsed with a light, salted. Girl leaves the farm lit behind her, but takes the path with her when she goes, wherever she goes, pretty as you please, full of sugared breath to waste on the crook of the next one's neck. The dirt I could dish, thinks Mongrel. I'm the one she'll miss the most. Well, shoot, somebody gotta be the one who stands burning on the porch, waves aunt, and somebody gotta be the one to get lost. I was saying earlier, I don't feel as much pressure with banter when we're on Zoom because I don't necessarily, like the bad thing about being on Zoom is you don't sort of get that real audience feeling in the room necessarily, but the good thing is that I don't feel sort of the pressure of the silence that can build in the room either. I can just keep going. So I'm gonna keep going. This one, I mean, the book really rooted in a lot of ways with my childhood history watching The Wizard of Oz. And I grew up in a time when there wasn't really cable TV or anything. And so The Wizard of Oz used to be, they used to play it on one of the networks once a year. You could only see it once a year and you had to sort of watch, you know, when it came on. And so it was this sort of magical annual touchstone for me that had scary moments in it as well. So this poem is called On the Most Terrifying Character in The Wizard of Oz. And usually when I ask that question at readings, people will say, you know, flying monkeys or the witch or whatever. But that was not the most terrifying character to me. So this is a poem about who was. It's not the part where he tells you he has no heart. It's not when he tells you how much he wants one, how everything until just now has been frozen for him in time, how the trees all seem so sour and territorial, all while he hefts that gleaming axe. It's not his silver tongue or how the tears fell like clockwork, then sawdust. It's not how he so casually walked off the job that day, knowing he would follow you anywhere. If only someone had thought to change the music just as you asked him to join you, a theremin or some low octave piano. If only you hadn't run after so much disaster. It's one kind of weapon to be able to tell a girl a story. It's another kind to be able to walk her home. It's not even the way he tried to breathe those flowers deep into his tin lungs just so he could sleep beside you, dreaming of how his ticking heart would be the alarm that wakes you, how his creaking arms would be the ones to build you a house that stayed put. It's the way he looks at you, the way he thinks he's loved you since before you even first arrived here in front of him, hungry for apples that weren't even his to give you. And the other thing with the Tin Man is if you look online of like still photos of the Wizard of Oz, of like the set of them together, and like Dorothy's really happy and the Scarecrow is cheerful and the lion is sort of charming and entertaining. And then the Tin Man is always standing behind them with a really menacing look and his axe like raised. And it's terrifying. And it's, you know, I'm just saying, I don't know that I would have trusted him. But. I don't know where things are in my own book, so I had to write page numbers down. This is called After the Girl. It's just a chapped lip that won't stop bleeding. Let me try that again. Strip where the field of the face meets the woods of the mouth is called the invitation. No, it's called the vermilion border. There are nameless parts of the body that are designed to absorb someone else's hands. It's just a chipped piece of light that thought it had my number. It's tough to handle a fish hook and not get stuck, the clef of it kissing your hands. Sometimes, just like anyone else, I see red. In the nameless story of 12 years ago, a girl takes herself out of the picture like pulling something a hound shouldn't eat out of its mouth. A strong female lead. Sometimes, just like anyone, I try to wrap my head around it. Any number of ways to absorb someone else. I mean, picture it. A girl, her mouth, a brick red house, and you without your invitation. Let me try it again. Let the pale black lake under my left eye take its name from the girl who got hooked, got stuck. It's tough to handle. Sister, my head aches the way a brick aches when it first touches mortar. It sounds naughty the way you say it. The house has me in its backwater embrace. That morning, it wasn't the light that hit me. We'll go a bit lighter now. This is called Everyone Assumes the Animals All Know Each Other. And there's a tiny bit of backstory to this. If any of you are on Instagram, so several years ago, there was sort of these popular photos that were going around of a family, I think they're in Australia or New Zealand, that thought they had adopted a magpie. There was a magpie that was sort of like hanging out with them, and they were taking these amazing photos, and there was like a photo with like the magpie on the son's head, and like it was popping up in the kitchen, like magpie bombing in photos. And the family just thought this was the most charming thing, and that they had sort of this new pet. But in my mind, like the photos were sort of ridiculous or made the family look ridiculous. And in my mind, I was thinking like, this magpie is just totally trolling this family and is having the best time making fun of them. And they think it's like the cutest thing. And it sort of gave spark to, you know, another connection I have with these fairy tales and these stories that you read growing up. And I think, you know, one of the most sort of the saddest moments in childhood stories, I feel like, is in Mary Poppins. You might remember there's a set of younger children, like almost babies or infants, that Mary Poppins, you know, sort of in the group of kids that Mary Poppins is caring for. And in the book, when they're that young, they can actually talk to animals. They can't speak yet to communicate with humans, but they can understand and talk to animals, and the animals talk back to them. And then as soon as they're able to kind of process language and talk to people, they stop being able to understand animals. And it just sounds like animal noises and gibberish. And it's this really beautiful moment of maturity where you think about, like, maybe there are these magical moments that babies and infants have before they learn language, where they're really communicating with a lot of other pieces of the world than we think. And it just made me think of the ways that we project onto animals and sort of make them friends and in our minds. So this is, everyone assumes the animals all know each other. Geese these days really need to work on their V's. Tornadoes need to slow their roll and keep their cones tight. Don't get it twisted. The dogs are here to teach us how to lose something important. The bears know what's what. The ants just want it more than we do. The cats have reached consensus on refusing to pull us out of fires. It's that old grift. If you love someone, leave them be. So they've sent in the magpie to work us undercover. It's important to have someone on the inside. A wasp would be too obvious, nervously banging itself against each glazed window pane like an amateur. A roach would just bring up all the old nightmares, skittering across the floor like a cigarette cherry thrown out a car window onto the dark interstate. But a magpie is our ultimate prize, a thief who doesn't need us but chooses us anyway, and all the while he's picked up on all our tells, tucked certain of our favorite words into his beak, smuggling them out for constructing his next nest until we're left with only our own small commands. Sit, stay, speak until we lie down together. The magpie, without telling us in so many words, will be the one pulling our strings when we play favorites with the ones we know we cannot keep and the ones we try to replace. The collarless puppies falling all over each other like fountain water, tussling while we lie in wait for the moment they become motherless. I'm going to try to read the title poem to the book. It's really long and I rarely read it because it's a mouthful. I had learned that I used to write longhand, and then after I stopped writing for a long time, when I started writing again, I was writing on the computer, just in Word. And I didn't realize it at the time, but came to learn that my lines were getting longer and longer because in a Word document, I just kept writing. And whereas when I was writing longhand, there'd be like 5 words on a line because my handwriting would stretch it out. And so I started writing these really long lines without meaning to. And then sometimes I write too many of them. So this is a really long poem I'm going to try to get out. But this is really the heart of the book. I mean, this is the fairy tale of the book. So, Neck of the Woods. Filthy as 12 bar, filthy as a stuttering key in the hazy door lock at 4 a.m. Filthy as I don't know what it means to love you. Out in the country, there's no fence to speak of. There's just the blonde path, wide enough for a truck wide enough for 2 bodies to ride restlessly beside one another without ever touching. There's no fence to speak of, just various dusks, and I'm in love with the dust that kicks up. I'm in love with what a dirt road does to a truck. There's no edge of the woods. There's just the blonde path stretching out of the dark green like a leg bone. A radio dial catching a hit of station before moving on past into the static. 2 girls ride ruthlessly beside one another, one filthy as a story, the other filthy as a storyteller. One girl might leave a trail of crumbs behind her. One might leave a line of poured out gasoline. Old evening air, the way warm soda tastes like a hangover. A long drive in July. I got plenty of time. You got light in your eyes. It's all the middle of nowhere. When the music stops, everybody scatters, even the light. An embarrassment of a sunset, really. And why even talk about the stars as if we still care about them in the off hours when we're not confessing to the dead? These girls wore each other, is what I mean, passed out in each other's shoes, passed the ends of sentences from one to the other, like taking belts of whiskey out the bottle. One night, one girl waves goodbye to the other, and the empty fifth she leaves in my hand is where the story turns dark, is where I stick myself against the story, flush as a wheat paste poster, contact printing my body back onto itself, a decade delayed. Love, this is where the joke begins. One girl's gotten gone. Her brother walks into a bar to deliver the punchline, and the other girl doubles over. An inside job. See, you gotta be able to fall for there to be an edge. See the bar in waves, the doubled stars in waves, all just frosting on a cold cake. Both girls breathless in their own bodies now. Now, it's a ruthless thing to know what's about to happen to someone who does not know what's about to happen. One girl might see years go by in waves of roadside signs, a trail of vein rise up on the back of her hand before it begins to wind down the twin bones of her forearm. Two girls trailed each other, delivered one another from one year to the next, twinned until they wound down to just one night. One girl might leave a line of salt in the dirt, one a flush of dust sifted into a river. What is there left to leave when there's no body to speak of? This is where the storyteller begins. I'm trying to know what it means to love anyone else the way I meant to love her, the way a sweet tooth loves salt. Sugar, I used to know this place like the back of my papery hand. Now there's just the blonde past, a river oversaturated with roses and ash, a back way home, a way back to what there ever is to leave behind. I'm trying. The smell of fresh pine, the small task of rain on a windshield, adrift like the bow of a single fiddle, drawing itself across my collarbone, my lungs sinking and rising slow like sloppy keys in a deep octave, my heart resting dark like a gun in a glove box whenever I might need to lean for it. I've paid some hush money to the unpaved path, the paved over past, plucked up the door lock and parked 2 loose cigarettes in the useless tape deck. Then that small piece of quiet, after the click of the ignition, but before the radio cuts on. The quarter glass coaxing in the scalene country air, yellowing its passengerless slant over half the truck's bench seat. The angles catching nobody, missing it all. What any girl with half a mind wanders out this way for, to take as much of it in over and over, and sure enough, breathe it all the way out. That is a mouthful, but I got through it. I have just a couple more from the book, and then I'm going to read a couple new ones, and then we'll see if anybody has any questions. So the title poem to the book was sort of my attempt at writing a fairy tale. I wanted to see if I could unwrite one too. So this is called Reverse, a Fairy Tale. A pluperfect storm, wolves taken to sporting cardigans and warbies, pinging the forest breeze for corruption. The witches fondly remembered as favorite grade school teachers, formative but basic. Everyone's mother's working third shift. Everyone's dad is casually panicked with accidentally salt instead of sugar. We were supposed to have skipped town. We photographed the supper, which was too beautiful to serve. Our resting bitch faces stare back from the improvidence of empty Wedgwood, a presidentless clean plate club. Sister, unravel the napkins from their swans, undecant the burgundy, and cool your burners, dear. Unsneak the bones from their low boil. Nothing so unspeakable as an actual wrong turn. The wolves give Socratic lectures, were impossible to forget, but hard to remember. Their cold calls give us paper cuts, crushes. It's so tempting to turn on them, walk back our pebbled position before our hours up, return to the door, chew on our thoughts for a spell, unknock ourselves senseless, the way it ever begins, a path and a girl swanning right into some house that doesn't belong to her, once upon a time. So I grew up in a pretty rural part of Virginia. I'm not ashamed to say it was a redneck place. There's a lot still to love about it, and there's a lot I wanted to leave about it. But there were a lot of touchstones of that place for me. One of them being like Camaros and boys driving cars like Camaros. This is called Things Go South. Always trust a red door on a black Camaro, thighs sticking to the vinyl in the June sun, pinking up the place. Here, the apple don't fall from the tree. Here, whatever you find lying on the ground is yours. A scratch off waiting to strike, the shade from a sidelong glance. You're looking at what happens when a body fights back 3 years after the fact. 3 years after the fact, the sweet morning stench of you sweating out last night's liquor just by pushing my tongue against the porcelain crown glued in my mouth, like hitting a switch. Every town I leave on scholarship. Nothing looks better to me than seeing nothing for miles. I can fit everything I love into this trunk, into my own 2 arms, into my backhanded smile. And this gas station bathroom is more than just an American notion of the dirtiest place on earth. It's where I'll put on my face. I know how to wipe a scene clean, and then I'm gone, love, like I was never there. And even if it could hear you at these speeds, the back seat don't care a lick what you have to say. Sweetheart, I sympathize with the assassin in every story. So the book is kind of divided up. I have 4 different poems that are all called Spoiler. And the first few are tied to very specific literary characters that I tried to write spoilers for. And then the last one, I tried to write my own spoiler. So that's the one I'm going to read tonight. Spoiler. Was born a shamble, was raised as many by a marrow and a follow, made first fortune before first word, had it made. Follow left the house each morning, marrow worked to the bone. One sinister, one borrow I loved more than my own stalled self, Early knew for certain one tomorrow I'd make a great aunt. I lived from we to we, tried to save my crumpled singles, put on a bold lip, pulled firm on my love, like hinging down a set of attic stairs. What a racket, what a small cord attaches us. My heart still the spelling bee I throw each time on purpose. We had words, then slept like ice in the slit of a tucked top sheet. After a spell, sure I slow ached, sulked my way awake. Once upon a table, coffee with chicory and makeshift bliss. My eyes, bigger than blue plates, truth, it was almost too much to swallow. Took it to go, clocked myself out. A time or two had my lights knocked out, my knee socks knocked off, but soft, but still, a ceiling fan, a sill, and a souse who hung on my every world. No two ways about it. I fell for us, hot and must as all get out. Took my Eastern time across to the Pacific, doubled down and doubled back. Put my face in the path of another's full palm slap. Struck by how dumb I was struck. Inked myself clear until I was sure as sure was numb. Got my house in order, but never could quite give up the drink. The way it confects me, the way I stay spoked with what wrecks me. Curled myself all the way inside the inside of our last joke, the punched line we lured the most, as thicket as our thievery, our ashed plot unfallowing me like a neck's own woods toward a choice choke of light. I can't imagine. I reckon I can only imagine. See how we're doing on time. I'm gonna read some new stuff, which is kind of nerdy. But I didn't know I had a second book, and then I started writing one. And I'm not that far into it, but I'm gonna pull it up and read a few things. Right now, it's called Wage. So I worked for 10 or 12 years full-time in restaurants. And a lot of the work I do now at Legal Aid sort of intersects with people who have to do precarious work and live on cash and don't have a lot of, we're sort of walking that tightrope all the time. And so I wanted to write about that time in my life and write about that condition as well. And I just saw something on Twitter today where some editor was like, please, poets, please start writing titles that are shorter than the actual poems. And then I felt good about myself because like the poems I'm writing now are usually like one-word titles. So I felt vindicated. So I'm gonna read one that's called Wage, and we'll see how this goes. I don't think I've read this before out loud. Oh, I should say I bartended for a long time, and I'm drinking water out of a pint glass that came from one of my bars. And you can tell it's a bar pint glass because, I don't know if you can see, but it has this little demarcation, like this scuff mark. That's because we would stack the glasses upside down, and so eventually after a while, so like it's a big tell. You go into somebody's house and they have a pint glass and it has this on it. They worked restaurants before. Wage. One by one, as they burned out, we triaged the light bulbs to priority slots around the house. The bedroom still held a candle for us. The walls stayed rented white. I can take almost anything at this point. The waking wince of morning, which is afternoon, which is like someone holding tightly your hand while you're wearing a ring. The kitchen litigates our unreturned dishes. Baby, paradise will be a house without linoleum floors, edges puckered up like an open carton of milk, its origami lip. The birds have not yet learned to mimic our phones, but coolly master car alarms and the dog's longing. All I need to know is the time of day and the names of the regulars. Not their names, but what they drank. Purple rain, dirty sky, adios, mother. Showing up is a full-time job where the paycheck is a paper ghost tendering the wrong kind of zeros. It was the year of the drought. Our stacked cash never laid flat. We pulled one bright 20 and kept it rolled like a rumor. A season fleshed out by what fell. Ice into a glass, a dress onto a floor, a girl into a grind. Once, a boy off a fourth-story roof. What you get is to be changed. Nothing from the sky for weeks, and then I poured everyone and myself a drink. I was taken with leaving town. No, all of us were. By which I mean we were taken with not leaving. The town took us fact we'd be back. It'd all be here waiting to step into, like a dress or a downpour, the house, the glass, the time of day. Even the boy come back as a bird, thin beak tilting at every wind-felled scrap. What was that? What was that? The night downtown blacked out, we walked out of the bars unbanked, as if it were the first snow, arms raised to catch what on our skin. I felt it melt into me anyway. I've trained my wrists to carry more than I can carry. A malfunction of lightning bugs, the tight fists of peonies demanding their rights, the delinquent quiet, the lip-bitten memory of when we first learned to lie, brick by brick. What was the time? That hour slipping itself up under my shirt. I can take anything. Our currency is we stood outside of everyone else. I open all the windows and doors because I do, in fact, want to air condition the whole neighborhood. I want to bring it all down a dozen degrees until even the churches of our enfolded hands are cooled and congregationless and still possible. My sleep put each next day on layaway until the once too many. I came back and you did not. How could I even touch it? Your love, like an orange wedge, breaking apart in my mouth. The sky touches the birds, and the birds keep their distance, faking thirst and emergency. It's no stretch for us to understand how anybody can, how anybody will confess to something they didn't do. That maybe turned out okay. How about 8:15? I think I can do 2 quick more. Does that sound okay, Amy? Yeah, okay. This one, I wanted there to be bridges between the first book and what I was doing now, and that was sort of fairy tales and girls from childhood. And if I'm writing about my restaurant time in the 90s, I was thinking about like who were the girls then who were sort of popular and in popular culture. And I was thinking like there's Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks and there's Donna Martin from 90210. And so you're kind of straddling those two categories. And so if you know anything about 90210, you know there was an episode that was basically called Donna Martin Graduates. Donna gets drunk at prom. You'll have to go back and watch it. But I wanted to write a different poem, so this is called Laura Palmer Graduates. Laura Palmer graduates. I can't love them if their hands aren't all tore up from something. Guitar strings, kitchen knives, and grease burns, heaving the window ACs onto their crooked old sills come June. Fighting back. That porch light's browned inside with moth husks again, and I can't climb a ladder to save my life, i.e. the world spins. Even when it's lit, it's half ash. Full drunk under a half moon, and I'm dazed we're all still here. Most of us, least. For the one and every girl gone, I sticker gold stars behind my front teeth so I can taste just how good we were. I swear I can't love them if they can't fathom why an unlit ambulance on a late highway means good luck. I hold my cigarette smoking arm upright like I'm trying to keep blood from rushing to a cut. What's true is my shift's over and I'm here with you now, and I'm wrapped up tight on the steps like a top sheet, like the morning paper before it's morning. Look up and smile. What does it matter that the stars we see are already dead? If that's the case, well then the people are too. Alive is a little present I give myself once a day. Baby, don't think I won't doll up and look myself fresh in the eyes, in the vermilion pin curl of my still heart and say, it's happening again. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna do one more. Is that okay? We'll do one more and then wrap. Okay. This is, I think it's always good to end on a love poem. We'll leave people feeling good. This is called If By You, You Mean We. And it's an ode. The apples are early this year and the grass is late. The taxi is early and the past is late. The fist is late. The tooth, like the news of the tooth, broke both early and late. I'm telling you, this all really happened. I had a love I ripped through like it was bread. I had bread and cheese, apples and sugar on my every plate, a sugar rose on my every cake. A love like a water ring soaked into the grain of my kitchen table. Sugar, I don't need it refinished. The way it happened, I was my own witness. When we was together, everything was so grand. I love you like the 52 bones of the feet, the 54 of the hands, the hell and the fast foam from a high water wave smoothing itself toward me like a flu passed through a kiss. I couldn't keep anything down. So happened, it was my bread and butter for years to turn the tables of this town. I didn't know a morning that wasn't the end of my night. I came in through your basement bedroom window. I brought a love like two forkless fists stuffed with lemon cake, a love like the house spider that crawls in and then out of your open mouth during sleep, leaving only your waking tongue and its hustled memory of caught snowflakes from an early flurry.